People were starting to say it's an East Coast, West Coast rivalry because it was people that's trying to make money. It was true people trying to make careers, it was people trying to get famous, and Tupac's a legend. Like I said, Tupac wasn't born, he was sent to us.
It took place shortly after lights out. Between the buzz of the electric lock and the sound of Suge Knight's cell door flinging open, there was a pause of half a second. Nobody made a move. No guard in sight. Not a warning. Then chaos ensued. Shouting, muffled by the contact of body and steel, shadows brushed with swift, blunt force. Suge lay there, bruised, bloodied, and hardly awake when it was all done. Lips split, bone snapped. However, the true narrative was revealed by the missing sound and the strange silence that ensued. The cameras. Nothing had been caught by them.
Named Diddy 77 times in court documents related to Tupac's.
We're talking about a man locked inside one of the state's most secure prison wings, Suge Knight, founder of Death Row Records, the man who helped shape West Coast hip-hop in the 90s. Now, he's at the center of what prison officials are calling an isolated incident, an attack that left him hospitalized. But insiders aren't buying the official story. Not when the surveillance system conveniently glitched. Not when the playback files were corrupted. Not when the only camera still working was pointed at a mop bucket. This wasn't some random prison fight. This was calculated, a staged scene meant to look like chaos while hiding the real intent. And the players involved? Still unnamed. Still untouched. Because Suge Knight isn't just another inmate. He's a living archive of hip-hop's darkest secrets. And lately, he's been talking, through prison podcasts, phone calls, and interviews, stirring up stories the industry would rather forget. Naming names. Exposing deals, betrayals, and something even deeper, truths that suggest a hidden network of power players whose reach goes far beyond music. Things escalated after his latest claim. Suge dropped a bombshell. Tupac Shakur, the icon, the rebel, the legend, didn't want to be saved. According to Suge, while Tupac lay in the hospital, suffering from his gunshot wounds, he said, "I'll die before I go back. Let him shoot me." Knight claims those words were spoken right there in the hospital room. And that Pac's mother, Afeni Shakur, honored his wish. Allegedly, she even instructed doctors not to revive him after he slipped away the first time. That's not just a revelation. That's a truth that could reshape history and break legacies.
The only man currently facing charges in the case, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, claims that Sean Combs, also known as Diddy, paid for a hit on Tupac.
Crazy rumors have been told to us before. He's alive in Cuban beliefs, and we've experienced holograms. However, the sole man in Shocker's automobile that night in Las Vegas said this. Furthermore, the question of who fired the gun becomes, who allowed it to remain in place if Sue is speaking the truth? Admired and revered, Afeni was a fiercely protective figure. However, what if Suge's story shows something more calculating? A choice made out of resignation or, worse, pressure, rather than love? Who was the beneficiary of Shocker's silence?
Right now, Davis is fighting for bail ahead of his trial, which he has pleaded not guilty for.
Suge insists it wasn't just Tupac Shakur who feared going back to prison. According to him, it was that looming threat, losing freedom, power, and a legacy on the edge of becoming prophetic, that truly broke Pac's spirit in those final moments. But not everyone's convinced. Former Death Row insiders claim Suge is rewriting history, shifting blame onto the system, steering attention away from his own role. Still, the timeline fits. That night, there was the MGM Grand Fight, looming criminal charges, rising East Coast tension, and betrayal rumors circling like vultures. But Suge isn't just revisiting Pac's final wishes. He's tying them directly to a bigger power structure. Through his prison podcast, Collect Call, Suge has been edging closer to directly accusing the industry of orchestrating murders, burying evidence, and silencing people who know too much. In one episode, he flat out said Diddy deserves prison for what happened to Tupac. In another, he hinted that Dr. Dre paid people to have him removed permanently. And when asked about the current Combs trial, Suge didn't hold back. He said, "Diddy isn't the root, he's just one symptom of a much bigger, much darker disease."
Yes. Yes. He ate every bit of it. I remember one time, he was like, who did you grow up listening to? I'm like, Tupac. I ain't mentioned Biggie. That nigga ain't even talk to me for like 4 days after that. Everything with Pac, like, you couldn't say Pac was anything better than Biggie. You can't put them in the same realm or nothing. It was all about Biggie.
Which raises the real question, was the attack on Suge Knight payback for calling out hip-hop's untouchables, or a preemptive strike by forces even he hasn't exposed yet? Because this isn't just about prison gossip. Suge once claimed he'd seen canceled checks tied to a murder-for-hire plot. He's openly accused Dre, Diddy, even Afeni Shakur. He said names that others wouldn't dare whisper. And then, suddenly, he's ambushed in a prison where even toothpaste gets logged and monitored. Sources close to the case say Suge had recently filed for a new hearing, hoping to overturn his 28-year sentence. The court denied it. But maybe freedom wasn't the real goal. Maybe it was exposure. Buried in that filing were accusations that his own legal team had sabotaged him, that he'd been cut off from the outside world before agreeing to the plea deal that sealed his fate. One lawyer called it shocking and unconscionable. Another warned, if it happened to Suge Knight, it could happen to anyone.
And that was to destroy East Coast rap. And what I mean by that, and I know people gonna like, yo, Gene is out of his mind and everything like that. Check this out, brother.
While all this plays out in public, inside that prison, Suge Knight is surrounded by silence. No official word on who attacked him. No names, no motives, no transfers. Just bruises, and silence. Yet every time Suge picks up that prison phone, another thread unravels. Another old rivalry reignites. Another buried secret starts echoing. When Suge said on his podcast that Puffy, no secrets, that wasn't bravado, it was a warning. When he joked about Combs being in danger behind bars, it wasn't shade. It was hard-earned experience. Now Suge knows, every word he speaks could be his last. And it's not just about his own story. Knight's name has surfaced at least 50 times during Diddy's ongoing human trafficking trial. Some say Suge's chasing attention again. Others believe he's leaving breadcrumbs on purpose. Either way, his attacks on Combs aren't random or personal, they're deliberate. Connected to decades of beef, from East Coast, West Coast. Wars to secret NDAs and backroom deals no one wants exposed. Suge isn't painting Diddy as the lone villain. He's framing him as just one infected piece of a poison system and asterisk.
They did not want East Coast rappers to get big. They were suppressing all new artists that was coming out of New York. Jay and Diddy was doing that.
Suge Knight may be running out of time to talk now that his own body has been shattered in a situation that seems more and more like a hit with each additional detail. However, he has never been deterred by that. Actually, it has just made him more vocal. He's not merely portraying himself as the bad guy. He is slowly becoming a martyr. Now portrayed as a prophet, the power-hungry tycoon who once used a phone call to crush rivals is shouting into the storm as the same industry he helped create tightens the news asterisk.
Cause him and Diddy was giving that deal, we gotta keep these East Coast rappers down. Cause down south rappers, Cash Money, No Limit, Ludacris and them, they was taking little money and bringing back more money and making more money for them.
But why now? Why the sudden escalation? Is it because the Shakur files are being reopened? Is it tied to Keefe D's upcoming trial and the names he might still reveal? Or are we witnessing Suge Knight's final act, one man unloading every secret before the curtain falls for good? We don't know who ordered the attack on Suge. But we do know this, it was clean, efficient, and left no evidence. That isn't revenge. That's containment. And then there's the Tams Burgers incident. What some now call the homicide burger setup. Suge Knight may be locked up for manslaughter, but his version of what happened that day paints a different picture. Less a reckless crime, more an ambush crafted by people with something to protect. Suge has never been shy about naming names. According to him, he was lured to that Compton parking lot under the pretense of meeting with Dr. Dre, the same man Suge once helped turn into a legend. In sworn testimony, Suge said he got a call from a mutual contact claiming Dre wanted to make peace. A sit-down to finally end the years of lawsuits, bad blood, and quiet threats. But when Suge arrived, it wasn't a handshake waiting for him. It was fists flying, and minutes later, a man lying motionless beneath Suge's wheels asterisk.
They was not scared of Suge Knight. They was terrified of Suge Knight.
Suge Knight insists he acted out of fear, reacting to an ambush, not starting one. Then came the real bombshell. Suge testified under oath that Dr. Dre had allegedly hired people to kill him. Not just once, but maybe twice. Suge claimed someone had shown him voided checks tied to a supposed murder-for-hire plot. In court, he said plainly, I was told that he had paid some guys to harm me. Now pause on that. Because if even part of that is true, the Tams Burgers incident wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a trap. A calculated power play staged in broad daylight, covered in plausible deniability, and filmed just blocks from the set of Straight Outta Compton, the very movie that reignited tensions between Suge and Dre in the first place. It all traces back to that day at the production office. Suge showed up. He was turned away. Minutes later, someone called him back. They're trying to take care of you, Suge said the caller warned. Dre's going to come by. But Dre never showed. Instead, Suge found fists flying, Bone and Sloan throwing punches, a car window smashed. Seconds later, Suge gunned the engine. It's easy to paint that as another violent outburst from a man with a dangerous reputation. But Suge tells it differently, as a setup. A carefully coordinated strike by people who wanted him gone, whether that meant prison or a body bag. Either way, out of the game asterisk.
2 weeks ago, I'm outside my office. My assistant comes up and says, Suge Knight wants to speak to you from jail. I said, who? He said, Suge Knight. The Suge? Yes. Gotta be kidding me. No.
And there's one thing that keeps circling back, the same quiet narrative, that Dr. Dre orchestrated chaos from a distance while keeping his own hands clean. Suge Knight has said before that even law enforcement hinted Dre was behind the 2014 nightclub shooting, the night Suge was hit 7 times at a pre-VMA party. Again, Suge claims he saw canceled checks, documents, evidence that's never made it into court but keeps surfacing in backroom whispers. The question is, did this feud between two giants spiral so far out of control that it turned into something colder, more calculated? Something beyond personal beef? Because the industry has never been kind to loose ends. And Suge, for all his power and history, has started to look exactly like that, a dangling wire sparking in the dark. Even from behind bars, he keeps pulling back the curtain. Not just on Dre, not just on Diddy, but on the entire machine. Suge once said Puffy didn't come up with those plays on his own. He's not just naming names, he's calling out a culture. A culture that's thrived for decades on fear, secrets, and silent deals. And Suge's not playing along anymore. Which brings us to something that still feels unreal, even now, the ashes. Suge once told People magazine that after Tupac died, his closest friends gathered around and smoked him, literally. They rolled pack up, ashes and all. Suge called it a ritual. A way to keep a part of him alive inside them forever. It sounds like urban legend. But insiders close to the death row camp confirmed that something did happen that night. A bag was passed around. A circle was formed. A moment too raw, too sacred, or maybe too chaotic to ever show up in official records. It wasn't just bizarre. It was grief reimagined as loyalty, trauma, and myth, asterisk.
I'm not the guy who's here for Puffy's downfall, but I am the guy who supports the victims who got victimized, right?
We don't often talk about what fame does to grief. Tupac wasn't just a friend to them, he was the face of a movement. When he died, they didn't just lose a person, they lost the crown jewel of their empire. So they turned to ritual, symbolism, smoke, and memory to cope. Suge admitted he didn't join in, but he understood why they did. Because when everything else gets stripped away, your voice, your freedom, your story, you hold on however you can, even if it's through fire. And it's no accident Suge is retelling these stories now. Not years ago, not through memoirs or polished documentaries, but now, from a prison cell, through static-filled phone calls and tightly controlled interviews. Because the names he's dropping aren't relics of the past. They're still active, still powerful, still running labels, still turning artists into icons. The Diddy trial isn't just about one man falling. It's a mirror. And Suge's using it to reflect back everything he claims he's witnessed, all the things we were never supposed to know, asterisk.
Got it. So you're saying Diddy's an FBI informant and he's been one for many years.
How would they say? Nothing ever happens, but it's still, like I say, angel.
The timing of Suge Knight's failed legal appeal felt too pointed to ignore. Just as his voice started gaining traction again through podcasts and prison phone interviews, his last real lifeline, a writ of habeas corpus challenging his 28-year sentence, was shut down for good. The court didn't just deny it. They dismantled it. The judge called Knight's claims insincere, his timeline suspicious, his arguments lacking substance. On paper, it looked like routine procedure. But between the lines, many saw something else, a deliberate effort to legally silence a man who refused to shut up. In court, Knight's lawyers argued that his declining health, worsening vision, and solitary confinement had prevented him from filing earlier. But the court wasn't buying it. The judge pointed out that Knight had filed other motions before, implying he knew how to work the system when it served him. Some saw that as fair. Others saw it as a convenient reason to shut down the only man still pulling back the curtain on hip-hop's golden era. A man boxed in by red tape. His voice limited to 15-minute prison calls while the people he's calling out move quietly in the background.
Well, all due respect to Puffy, you gotta realize one thing. He didn't start off like that. I'm quite sure somebody taught him that, and that's more deep in the industry.
Those close to Suge Knight insist he was never given a fair shot. They claim his plea deal was forced, that his own defense team wasn't ready to take the case to trial, and that key details, including the larger context around the Tams Burgers incident, were never fully brought to light. Now, even his last chance to challenge those alleged injustices has been erased. His legal appeal declared null and void. From the outside, it looks like justice being served. But from the inside, it feels more like a slow-motion erasure. The legal equivalent of pulling the plug on a man with too many stories left to tell. And it doesn't end at the courtroom doors. Suge has repeatedly described living in near-total isolation, limited contact with his lawyers, strict restrictions on communication. According to him, it's not about safety. It's about containment, keeping him out of reach, keeping him silent. In a world where silence is safer than truth, that kind of treatment starts to feel less like procedure and more like prevention. The harder Suge pushed back against his sentence, the tighter the system seemed to lock him down. No appeals, no options. And as that last attack made clear, no real protection either.
If you add all that type of stuff up, and you'll see how the industry been built on the secret rooms.
Suge Knight's failed appeal wasn't just another court loss, it was a clear reminder that while he may be out of the spotlight, he's far from free. Legally boxed in, physically caged, surrounded by threats both seen and hidden within. The very system meant to deliver justice. And as his claims keep drifting into territory most wouldn't dare touch, the court's refusal to even hear his case feels like more than procedure. It feels like erasure, treating Suge not as an inmate, but as an inconvenient archive. A man holding too much history the system would rather silence than acknowledge. That's exactly why the recent attack feels so precise. Surgical. Less like random violence, more like a message, not just to Suge, but to anyone else thinking about unearthing old secrets. Those camera glitches, the missing witness IDs, that's not accident. That's design. A signal, we can reach anyone, anywhere, even behind locked doors, even under surveillance, even when the whole world is listening.
That boy life is dangerous. His life isn't, he's just not dangerous with the shit they said he was doing, but he's in danger. He know too much.
But here's the twist, Suge Knight isn't staying quiet. If anything, he's doubling down. Through his podcast and interviews, he keeps dropping hints that there's still more. That the walls are filled with whispers, and he remembers every single one. From label politics to street politics, from Dre's alleged backroom deals to what really happened the night Tupac Shakur took his final breath, Suge keeps speaking. Whether it's fact, fiction, or something in between, his voice is still echoing. And maybe that's what scares them the most. So what happens next? How many more names are etched into Suge's memory? How many more secrets are still waiting to surface? And most importantly, how far will the powers that be go to silence the last man who knows how the game was really played? Let us know what you believe. Is Suge just spinning stories to stay relevant? Or are we finally seeing the truth leaking through the cracks in hip-hop's glittering empire? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, not all ghosts wear chains. Some just pick up the phone **.